Something Radiates, a novel by Brenda Marie Smith. Dietrich. He said he'd heard the sound of one hand clapping. He said once his mind took in the wondrous no sound of holy oneness, the empty echo of eternal bliss, he was never the same. He could hear it still, he said, resounding in the ether and tickling the back of his brain. Something not normal was going on with his brain. No argument there. Sarah. She had extrasensory dreams, but was short on prescience. Now and then she would dream things which she would later find out had actually taken place while she dreamed them. Often even the details of these dreams would turn out to be surprisingly true. None of this dreaming kept her from marrying the wrong man. If it hadn't been 1970 and the Vietnam War hadn't been raging, killing thousands of boys her own age, even boys she'd grown up with who had not deserved to die, if she'd never compared her utopian dreams to the nuclear trigger war machine nightmare, or even if she'd been getting any at all from any young man who knew the first thing about pleasing a woman, her choice mightn't have seemed so easy. But when this man, this blue-eyed man with long hair that streamed in the wind and sparked a wildness inside her, an older man in his mid-30s who flattered her with his full-on attentions, a tall man, Dietrich Peters, who said he had heard the sound of one hand clapping, when Sarah was barely 20 and this man hitchhiked into rural Oklahoma and asked her to come away with him on a spiritual quest, then despite her telepathic tendencies and the wishes of her parents, and as a predictable result of all she was lacking, she of course said yes. Couldn't someone have warned her? Not that she would have listened, but couldn't this savior someone have taken her and shaken her and pulled her back before it was too late? Part 1, Chapter 1, last weekend of May, 1989. Sarah Stevens was sleeping soundly, dreaming crazily, when a burning light in her dream suddenly blinded her, and a loud, penetrating snap startled her awake. She lay still in her bed, listening. Familiar sights from her bedroom tangled up in vivid remnants of her dream. A sudden sharp crack. There it was again. A gunshot? No, lightning, followed by an eerie howl. Then she felt an abrupt change in the house's air pressure. The wind, it was railing against her little frame house and rushing through the hall to her room. Sarah leapt up and ran to the living room, stopping short when she saw her front door standing wide open. She saw the sputtering street light across the way, moss-laden trees whipping in the wind, trash and leaves whirling in the air, ticking along the street. This damned door had been bolted shut. She had a clear memory of locking it. How could the wind have forced it open? Her mind raced faster. Her teenage sons, asleep with their heads at opposite ends of the couch and their legs overlapping, seemed to be stirring. She actually hoped that her kids had unlocked the door, even left it ajar, because otherwise... A fierce wind surged in through the open doorway. Lightning flashed like a strobe light beyond it. Magazines from her end table flew up and scattered across the hardwood floor. A tall lamp by the door toppled over, the glass from its bulbs shattering into slivers. A white-hot bolt of lightning split the night, illuminating her living room and cracking against something close, possibly something in her yard. She couldn't see what. In the next instant, violent thunder sounded as though it were ripping the sky apart. Then rain, sudden torrents of rain burst forth and blew deep into the room. The boys popped open their eyes. Sarah dashed against the thrust of the wind and across the small front room, hopping over flapping magazines in her path. Battered by the wind and rain, she grasped the door with both hands, using it to help her stay standing. Outside, garbage cans rolled and clattered. The trees kept whipping. The street light blinked and went out. Sarah pushed as hard as she could, but being slight and only 5'2", she could barely budge the solid core door. The thrashing wind was too strong for her, seemed to be willfully resisting her. "Boys, come help," she called out, but the racket of the thunderstorm smothered her voice. She gave the door her mightiest effort and moved it farther, but reached a point where her shoving only held it in place and kept it from slamming her against the wall. "Shit!" With all the volume she could muster, she screamed, "Quincy, Daniel, come help me close the door!" The teenagers jumped up and rushed toward her, the blue-eyed lights of her life. Sarah shouted warnings about the broken glass and slippery floor. By the time the boys reached the door, they were nearly as sopping wet as she was. "Okay, we all push at once," Sarah yelled. 1, 2, 3, push! The three of them leaned in and pushed together. The door moved slowly toward its jamb until hitting an angle where the wind was deflected. Then it slammed instantly with a great sucking sound, jarring their shoulders as their momentum threw them against it. For what she knew beyond doubt was the second time that night, Sarah bolted, chained, and locked the front door. She flicked on the overhead light to see the floor spattered with leaves and twigs, broken glass, soaked magazines, and water, lots of water. She stood the toppled lamp back in its place, then spun dripping toward the boys, hyper with adrenaline and the electrifying energy of the storm. "You guys, why did you unlock the door? What were you thinking?" Daniel and Quincy, drenched as well, looked first at each other, then at their mom. "I didn't unlock it, I swear." Quincy sounded believable, but he was good at that. He'd had 15 years of practice at slick-talking his mother. Yet to Sarah at this moment he appeared completely innocent, with his smattering of freckles and shaggy brown hair. "I didn't do it either," Daniel said, the same sincere expression showing from under the dark hair hanging in his face. Though only 14, Daniel was fairly slick himself, but his big brooding eyes made him seem perfectly credible. With her hands on her hips, Sarah shifted her eyes between her tall sons, searching for signs of a lie. But they were good boys. They seldom lied to her. "I'd like to believe you, but how could the door blow open while it's locked without breaking the door or the door jamb?" "Yeah," Quincy said, "and how come the chain's not busted?" Daniel flicked the chain. "Yep, nothing's broken." They all gaped at the door and its undamaged chain. A Mexican painting of the Virgin of Guadalupe smiled down beatifically from above the door. Wondering absurdly whether the Virgin knew the secret of how the door came to be open, Sarah said a quick, silent prayer for protection. Still, she was worried. If the kids hadn't unlocked the door, then who did? Or rather, how did it open? Her front door's deadbolt and knob lock were standard issue, nothing fancy. It wouldn't take a Houdini to open them. But how on earth could someone have unfastened the indoor chain from outside? She couldn't take in the unreality of it. Beyond their walls, the storm swirled faster. Lightning flashed brightness between blackness into the room. The large four-pane picture windows shook harder with every gust of wind. "Boys, go get lots of towels." The kids ran to the bathroom. The second they left the living room, Sarah lifted the curtain at the rattling picture window. Just the idea of looking out there scared her senseless, and she didn't even know why she was looking. In the half minute it took the kids to return with heaps of towels, she saw no figures skulking through the driving rain. Sarah scattered the towels around the wet floor, plucked up the wet magazines, and told the kids to start wiping. She fetched a broom from the kitchen and swept up glass, twigs, and leaves, moving fast with the frantic rhythm of the storm. Snapping up the TV remote, Sarah switched from one local Baton Rouge station to the next, the faltering reception lasting long enough for her to see that no severe weather warnings were running. This was serious wind and rain. There ought to be storm warnings. Sarah kept flipping channels backwards now through the stations she'd just checked. Still no warnings. Why the hell not? Nothing was making sense. "This is crazy," Quincy said, watching his mom from amidst the puddles on the floor. "Whacked," said Daniel, slapping a towel into a puddle and sending water into the air. "Radically whacked," Sarah agreed. Flinching at nearly every lightning strike and thunderbolt, she helped the boys mop up water until they finished the job. Together they carried armfuls of soggy towels to dump into the bathtub. As they left the bathroom, the front door suddenly jolted as if trying to open. The doorknob jiggled. They halted and stared at the door, waiting in stone silence for it to jerk again.